Hi class, this is week 8 and we are going over some final things to sum up our class. I hope you've enjoyed learning about personality and the theories that have developed some of our thoughts on how people are and are the way they are. We're going to look at some final theorists and just some overarching theories or concepts of personality, and then we will be done. So don't forget about your finals, and you don't need to do discussion board week 8. You all get credit for it. Okay, so we're starting off with Julian Rotter. Most of the theorists today, actually, that we're discussing are still currently alive. Rotter was born in 1916, born in Brooklyn, lived comfortably until the Depression, and influenced by Adler and the social learning theory. Internal versus external control of reinforcement. So internal locus of control, belief that reinforcement is brought about by our own behavior, and external locus of control, belief that reinforcement is under the control of other people, fate, or luck. So two different concepts, right? Two very different concepts. Research, the researched age and gender differences, racial and socioeconomic differences, behavioral differences, and physical health differences, which you could see how the locus of control could be very different depending on those topics. Developing locus of control in childhood, learned in childhood relates to parental behavior, supportive parents, internal, offered praise, and independence encouraged, external, no male role model, many siblings, depressed mother. So those would be an example of things that are outside of your control. Reflection, strong relationships between locus of control and Bandura's self-efficacy. Locus of control can be generalized. Rotter's research is highly rigorous. Moving right along, Marvin Zuckerman, sensation seeking, still currently alive. Sensation seeking is need for varied, novel, and complex sensations and experiences. Looks in heredity. Assessment is sensation seeking scale, so that's the 3 S's. Components of sensation seeking, that's like a tongue twister there. Thrill, adventure seeking, experience seeking, disinhibition, and boredom susceptibility. His research was young versus old, men versus women, racial and cultural differences. And other findings, behavioral differences, personality differences, cognitive processes, occupational preferences and attitudes, and heredity versus environment. Sensation-seeking concept has stimulated a great deal of research and common sense appeal, which makes sense, right? Like, not to just use the word sense again, but that based on what we're feeling or sensing or what's going on that stimulates us, that might drive some forces in our personality. Lastly, we have Martin Seligman. Oh, I take it back. We have one more after him. Learned helplessness, which we talk about learned helplessness a lot nowadays. Still currently living. Learned helplessness is a condition resulting from the perception that we have no control over our environment. So we see a lot of people that come into therapy that have learned helplessness, whether that's from their parents somehow creating that thought in them, or they themselves based on different circumstances. But we see it a lot in people. Early research, canine research, replicated in humans. Learned helplessness findings in elderly people, emotional health, animal research, and depression. Explanatory style, a way of explaining to ourselves our relative lack of control over our environment. Optimistic style is expect good things to happen, prevents learned helplessness. And pessimistic style, expect bad things to happen, spreads helplessness to all facets of life, which we see that in people, right? Um, I might as well not even try because I can't change anything, and they just stay in the same situation, not changing it. Development of learned helplessness in childhood. Early learned helplessness can predispose use to a pessimistic explanatory style, which means from a young age, if you're already seeing things as being negative and there's no way of changing it, you're going to adapt this feeling of, well, that's the way it is, and that's how it's going to be, and I can't do anything for myself, and things of that nature. Um, Reflection, supported by a large body of data, learned helplessness similar to Rotter's locus of control leaves several unanswered questions. Mark, um, Martin Seligman, Positive Psychology. So positive psychology, we talk about it a lot today. He's also still living. The response to historical focus on pathological human functioning, happiness, excellence, optimal human functioning. Research relies on rigorous experimental research, findings on happiness, age, country of origin and marital status, health and physical activity, motivation and goal leads to behavior to bring about success. A new approach to the study of personality increases in research on happiness and other positive emotions and different kinds of happiness identified. So again, you're focusing on the positive of things versus the negative. Our last chapter just kind of goes over a few things in perspective of personality. There's genetic factors, right? So we looked over things that we may inherit, predispositions and tendencies that when we look at nature versus nurture, that's just the nature of things. That's just how we are. That's in our chemistry. Environment, that's the nurture, right? So what shapes us? What drives us to be who we are based on how we've been molded, how we've been taught, our socioeconomic status, our environment that we live in, our parents, our lack of parents, how many siblings we have, things of that nature. Theoretical, so learning factors, right? So self-efficacy, locus of control, learned helplessness. Am I optimistic or pessimistic? Those kinds of things, how I perceive things and then how I deal with those perceptions affect personality. Parental factors, right? Parents are huge in kids, and this is what's scary about even having children is, man, it's a huge blessing. But it's also a big job and a job not to be taken lightly. And unfortunately, too many people don't take it seriously. But we can majorly influence personality. Research findings. Considerable amount of research supporting the importance of parental influence on personality factors and traits. I can see with each one of my children, they all have very different personalities, but how I can influence those personalities and shape them, which is important for me to do as a cognizant parent. Theoretical support. Freud, personality fixed at age 5. Other theorists, personality changeable in later years. I believe your personality can change to some degree depending on life, circumstances, job, single to married, parent, not parent. Personality, I think, can change, but Freud thought differently. Conscientious factor, theoretical support. Freud and Jung, the conscious lies in the ego. Adler, consciously anticipate future events. Alport, conscious and rational and aware, and Rogers, conscious perception of self. So everyone looks at that differently. You got Maslow, the cognitive need to know and understand. Kelly, the form, constructs, and make predictions. And Bandura, learn through example. And then the unconscious factor, right? Freud introduced us to the world of the unconscious. And I think there's definitely that world. And then the research finding some research support rational unconscious versus non-conscious, and emotional unconscious remains mysterious and inaccessible. Because again, how can we, if something's unconscious, how can we research that, right? So I hope you have enjoyed learning about personality, and hopefully you maybe learned a little bit about your own personality. It may have caused you to look at your family or friends and to be like, oh, this is what's going on with your personality, or your birth order, or this is what developmental stage you're at, or hopefully you haven't psychoanalyzed people too much, but it's very interesting, and there's more and more we learn each and every day and all the time about personality, and I'm sure as more research continues, there's going to be more developments, but it is a very interesting concept. So I hope you've enjoyed the course. Don't forget about your finals, and I hope you have a wonderful summer. Thank you so much.